Hi, my name is Bogdan. I'm from Kragovec in Serbia, and I will present to you image-based numerical simulation of heart with prescribed displacements on the heart surface. The other authors are Milan, Nenad, and Milos. The goal of our work is to create numerical models of the heart which are based on imaging techniques commonly used by medical practitioners. There is a need to have accurate numerical models for better understanding of heart behavior in cardiomyopathy and other heart diseases. These numerical models can include a variety of different processes, such as transport, electrophysiology, and muscle mechanics. We focused on deformations of the heart walls. In our methodology, we track motion of the heart along select curves on the surface using images. We generate finite element model, prescribe displacements at appropriate nodes of the surface, and then use interpolation methods to deform the mesh smoothly. After mesh is deformed, we pass the displacements and velocities at the selected nodes to the finite element solver, which provides us complete displacements, velocities, and stress fields of the heart wall, and also blood flow field within the heart. Using this approach, we can run image-based simulations relying on realistic conditions and generate complex deformation patterns and blood flow for the patient-specific data. Imaging method that we use is echocardiography, echocardiogram, or simply an echo. It is an ultrasound of the heart. Echocardiography can help detect cardiomyopathies such as hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, dilated cardiomyopathy, and many others. The biggest advantage to the echocardiography is that it is not invasive. It does not involve breaking the skin or entering body cavities and has no known risk or side effects. Here we use methods where left ventricle of the heart is recorded in three different planes: 90, 150, and 210 degrees. After we get these 2D images, we manually select inner and outer surfaces of the heart. We select boundaries of the epicardium and endocardium. On the figures 3 through 5, these selections are shown as green points. We then use these selected points to create 3D models. In the figure 6, we can see one of the selected contours. For one model, we will have 3 of these contours, in each of the plane for epicardium and also 3 contours for endocardium. First, we make sure we have equally distributed points at the long section. For this, we simply use fixed division by long section and linearly interpolate the points. Once we have interpolated points like shown in the figure 7, we look at the cross sections of the model. At each cross section, we will have 6 points, 2 points per plane. Since the points that we got from the images can be erratic, irregular, we check whether the polygon created by these points is convex. If it is not, we neglect irregular points. Then we apply splines to the points so we can get equally distributed points at the cross sections. Now we have all the points in 3D like shown in the figure 10. Finally, we can connect these points to create surface of the model. We can create inner and/or outer surface of the model and also connect these two surfaces if needed. Once we have created the inner surface of the left ventricle, one of the options is to extrude it to create the outer surface. We can then create finite elements between these surfaces, which is shown in the figure 12. In the figure 13, multiple inner surfaces are shown. These are inner surfaces created from the different frames of the echocardiogram. We use these sequences of the surfaces to prescribe displacements. Since these surfaces contain only triangular faces, we have to interpolate the displacements to the mesh nodes. For each of the triangular faces, we have 4 additional points inside of them like shown in the figure 13. Here we use inverse distance weighting to interpolate prescribed displacements to the mesh nodes. Inverse distance weighting is a type of deterministic method for multivariate interpolation with a known scatter set of points. The assigned values to unknown points are calculated with a weighted average of the values available at the known points. The name given to this type of method was motivated by the weighted average applied, since it resorts to the inverse of the distance to each known point when assigning weights. In these formulas, W is simple weighting function as defined by Shepard, X denotes an interpolated arbitrary point, Xi is an interpolating node point, D is a given distance from the known point xi to the unknown point x, n is the total number of known points used in interpolation, and p is a positive real number called the power parameter. Other methods that we use are mesh-based shape deformation methods. These methods satisfy user deformation constraints at handles, at selected vertices or regions on the mesh. They propagate these handle deformations to the rest of the shape smoothly and without removing or distorting details. Some of the techniques cast the problem of handle-based shape deformation as a quadratic energy minimization problem, or equivalently the solution to a linear partial differential equation. There are many flavors of these techniques, but prototypical subsets are those that consider solutions to the bi-Laplace equation, that is, biharmonic function. This fourth-order PDE provides sufficient flexibility in boundary conditions to ensure continuity at handle constraints in the limit under refinement. A smooth deformation field D, which interpolates the deformation fields of the handle constraints, will impose a smooth deformed shape. Naturally, we consider biharmonic deformation fields subject to some handle constraints. Biharmonic functions are solutions to the bi-Laplace equation, but also minimizers of the Laplacian energy. We can generalize a biharmonic deformation by considering different powers of the Laplacian, resulting in a series of PDEs of the shown form. LibIGL provides implementations of a variety of state-of-the-art deformation techniques, ranging from quadratic mesh-based energy minimizers to skinning methods to non-linear elasticity-inspired techniques. In the figure 14, left ventricle is shown. Here the top of the model is constrained along all axes, and at the bottom nodes of the model displacements are prescribed. Left ventricle first contracts, and then it returns to the original position. When modeling the solid mechanics of the heart, two sources of stresses should be accounted, the passive and the active. The final stresses produced in the tissue are obtained adding the passive stresses and the active stresses. Passive stresses are a consequence of the structural properties of the cells and the connective tissue. From early stages, soft tissue behavior was described as a nonlinear over finite states. Another model is based on the recently available experimental investigation of Holzapfel and his research group. In the figure 15, 3D schematic of heart model and specimen obtained from heart tissue is shown, together with material local coordinate system. We can also see experimental curves without hysteresis or biaxial loading of myocardium tissue, where MFD is a fiber direction and CFD is G direction. Here we see average elastic biaxial Cauchy stress versus stretch relationship of all considered human left ventricle myocardial specimens subjected to a maximum stretch of 10% with different stretch ratios between MFD and CFD. Black curves correspond to ratio 1 versus 1, red to 1 versus 0.75, green corresponds to 0.75 versus 1, blue to 1 versus 0.5, and cyan curve corresponds to ratio 0.5 versus 1. Shear stresses acting on a material element are shown in figure 16. The average constitutive stress strain curves are also shown. They are given for the three modes according to notation in figure 16. The curves are obtained by cycling, loading, and corresponding to a different level of ultimate shear strain. Maximum shear strains are at level 0.5. This model was built into our finite element solver called PAC. Here are some of the results that we got. We showed the diastole part of the cardiac cycle, during which the heart refills with blood after the emptying done during systole, during contraction. Ventricular diastole is the period during which the two ventricles are relaxing from the contortions of contraction. Then dilating and filling. Axial diastole is the period during which the atria is relaxing under suction, dilating and filling. At the figure 17, we can see initial configuration of the left ventricle at the start of the diastole. We can also see muscle fibers. The muscle fibers are generated so that they respect the minus 60 degrees to the 60 degrees angle distribution. At the figure 18, we can see the displacement at the end of the diastole, and at figure 19, we can see normal stresses at final configuration of diastole. Here we can see the results which we got from the fluid simulations. We include aortic values where we prescribed pressure shown in the figure 20. In the figure 21, we can see vector velocity field at 0.02 seconds, at 0.1 seconds, and at 0.18 seconds. We also show velocities at long section of the left ventricle in the figure 22. Finally, we show velocity field at unwrapped surface of the model. For unwrapping of the surface, we use least square conformal maps. This method is implemented in libIGL library. In computer graphics, we denote a surface parameterization map from the surface to two-dimensional space. It is usually encoded by a new set of 2D coordinates for each vertex of the mesh. Least square conformal maps minimizes the conformal or angular distortion of the parameterization. To conclude, the presented methodology is implemented through real 3D heart models, which using recently developed orthotropic material model based on the Holzapfel experiment. This approach has a potential to be used in modeling the heart mechanical behavior in order to give accurate prediction of heartbeat for different heart diseases. This work is supported by SilicoFCM project that has received funding from the European Union Horizon 2020 Research and Innovative Program under grant agreement. This research was also funded by Ministry of Education and Sciences of Serbia. Thank you for your attention.